Hi there, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. This is PGC's webinar series, Setting Up in America, where we're exploring a number of different topics relating to companies going on that journey. And I'm joined by two special guests. So we're just going to quickly introduce ourselves. My name is Jeremy Wastel from PGC. We are an employer of record helping a lot of UK, European and international businesses on the setup process, but mainly relating to the employment aspect, where we become the legal employer and manage everything relating to payroll. I'm joined by Colin McCullagh from OCO Global and Yassin from OCO Global, but also representative of Florida's EDO. I'll hand over to you guys to do a quick introduction, and then we're going to work through some questions.
Thanks, Jeremy. So, Colin McCullagh from Director of UK and Ireland for OCO Global. We're a 18-year-old consultancy specialised in internationalisation. So we've got 9 offices around the globe. We've got 2 in the US, so 1 in New York and 1 in LA. And we help companies to expand overseas. We work directly with companies with the likes of market research, business development, representation, and through to setup in where they want to go to. But we also work with economic development organisations. We call them EDOs. So every sort of economy, if you like, has one of these. So in the UK, it's the Department of International Trade. Yeah. And those agencies are organisations that try to bolster their local economy. And they do that effectively from an international perspective, do it in 2 ways. They help their own domestic companies to grow and expand and export, and hopefully then set up overseas as well. And they also try to attract foreign jobs, foreign companies to come in and invest. So it's about job creation, but it's done in sort of in 2 ways, and they're building up their sort of economy in that way. So we work with them. So in the US, for example, we're European representatives for Florida, for Ohio, Missouri, work with Maryland, and a number of others. So rather than them setting up offices, let's say in France and UK and Germany, we are that representative on our job. And Yassin will go into a bit more detail on that.
Perfect. And Yassin, what's your role? And I guess in a bit more detail on an EDO, why should our viewers care about what an EDO is?
Sure. So my name is Yassin, and I'm a senior consultant with OCO Global. And I'm the representative for the UK and Ireland for the state of Florida. Okay. So my role with the state of Florida is that I am assisting UK and Irish companies that are looking at setting up operations in the US, and that could be looking at Florida as a base for their operations. So my daily work is to connect with the companies that have this type of plans, and I guide them through I call it the investor journey, where every company having a different need, working in a different sector, I make sure that we meet their needs in terms of information, because companies need information to assess the location they are going to. And also, I consider also the connections I could do, whether it is in the UK or Ireland, with service providers that have a link with Florida, or with directly in Florida, within the different communities, we call them the different counties, that have their own resources that can help these companies evaluate the opportunity to set up in the state.
Brilliant. Okay, I'm going to come back to that in a few questions time, because I just want to stress to people viewing that there's so many routes and opportunities or options available when going into the US, and it can be a bit overwhelming. And I think having access to advisors, and to go in a bit more detail about your fees or lack of fees, I think to start off with, though, from your experience, where are most businesses at the moment looking to set up, and why do you think that is?
Well, good. So, particularly at a global level, actually. So, I think what we're seeing is America becoming more and more attractive. Okay, so America has been and continues to be the number 1 sort of export market, if you like, for the UK. But last year we've seen 17% growth.
Oh, wow.
In trade between UK and US, which is an anomaly, really. There are a couple of factors in that. I think one is that, say 8 years ago, the BRICS went crazy and everyone was looking, and so there's a lot of this around emerging economies and jumping on that. And then of course you have Brexit and the European uncertainty. So I think that America, similar language, big market, and I think it's just a bit safer. So I think we're seeing that as a pattern, which is good news. And I think what we're seeing as well, so we've been working in this area for a long time. It used to be a lot of the big companies that would do the expansion. So it would be the big manufacturing, the big multinationals, and they'd be very strategic and have lots of jobs. Now we're seeing a lot of SMEs going, and not just product but service.
Why do you think there's this switch that's happened?
I think it's a mix of the sort of digital economy, I suppose, as well, and globalization in general. It's easier for companies, to find customers as well, online. So you get companies, we see a lot in, product they're able to sell through Amazon, for example, and they go, oh, my goodness, right, I'm starting to sell in America, right, I need a base there, because actually they've got different customer trends and that sort of. So we're just seeing the world is smaller, a little bit more connected. So I think that has helped to channel that. And SMEs are much more globally minded. The barriers are less than they would have been before.
Top 3 states people are talking about.
It's a great question. I think people are probably noticing as well that there is a little bit of shift for certainly historically. It's always been New York. It's been San Francisco, Silicon Valley, and maybe Boston. And that's where people, if you want to go to the US, most people go, yeah, are you going to New York? Are you going to, because that's where some of the big economies are. But it's changing. And I think partly because those big cities, they're still important, but they're very competitive and very expensive. Yeah. So for SMEs going in, they actually need to think twice about that rather than just going down the sort of the old, the old path. We've got a new economy here, and as I mentioned earlier, states, all the different states are looking at building. They're having a long-term view as to what their state is about and what it can offer. And what its economy is built around. So you see them being built around subsectors even and something out there. So to give you an example, so I mean, this southeastern part of the US is growing a lot. As an attractive place. So you've got the likes of Florida. Georgia would rate itself as the #1 state for business. It's got the world's busiest airport, so they're getting a lot of companies going in there. For example, the Carolinas, always quite. They offer a lot of incentives, for example. So they're that's growing. But you also see, look, Illinois is is always a popular one. But coming out of you see the tech side, obviously a lot of tech over the last sort of 20 years. So Austin and Texas. Yeah. So that's a counter towards to San Francisco, Silicon Valley, which become expensive. Austin is benefiting that, and we'll probably see the likes of Seattle and places like that develop as a result.
So Yassin, Florida as a state, and I guess to both of you on this one, sure. When people come to you and they say, I'm thinking of going to the US, I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to go. How do you guide them as OCO and also as a representative of an EDO? Like, how does that process work for people who might be interested in speaking to you guys afterwards?
I would say for me, one of the first questions I ask is, where is your client base?
Okay.
So a company looking at Florida can be guided by one of their main key accounts that is based in Florida. So that would be, I would say, one of the main drivers. But sometimes companies don't have a specific region where they will source their clients from. They can have a client base across America, meaning that where they locate is not related to the client, but related to where it would be the smartest for them to actually set up their operations. And then it depends also on the type of operations. Is it research and development? Is it commercial? Is it back office operation and customer support? So depending on the type of operations and the client base in America, we will then assess whether it is relevant for Florida to welcome that investment, or if we believe that it would be better off being in another state due to some other considerations, which is usually the access to talent, which is, I think it's quite important, because you can be looking at some states that have very lower taxes or that have perhaps a direct flight, but the place where you will actually find the people that will deliver your activity in North America might be different from the one you think it is at the first stage. Okay. And as Colin says, the usual of Chicago, New York, Boston, the Bay Area are not always the best solutions. Yeah. So that's what I'm looking at when I speak to companies.
So what are the things that you kind of draw out from a company in terms of a strategy that someone might be thinking about? If I'm a service-led business, a lot of the viewers are probably going to be recruitment companies. Maybe they've done a bit of business in the US already. They've got a few clients, but as a service business, you can probably be based somewhere and operate across the US, especially in the recruitment sector. What are the kind of 5 questions they should ask themselves, as well as be asked by you, when thinking about a location?
Really, for me, as I said, the first is, where are your clients? That's quite important. And also, where do you think you will find the talent for your operations? Because I always take the example of recruitment companies in the life science industry. London is a big hub, but you have to have a base in Cambridge at some point if you want to be in the main life science cluster. But also, that in Europe, if you want to have a base, Switzerland is often the smartest choice, because that's where you have the concentration of the players and the corporate headquarters. So for America, it's exactly the same. You need to be where the people are. So if you are working, I don't know, in the agricultural recruitment, you definitely need to be in the Midwest, because that's where the agriculture cluster is in America.
And how do you help the companies find clusters? And I mean, this is a kind of leading question here, because you've helped a couple of our clients in the past with, let's say they've set up an office in New York. They're wondering, where else can they go? Here's the sectors they operate in, and what do you do for them, and how much does that cost?
Okay, cool. So you very good. Thank you for the leading question. So if I just take a step back, because what we actually do is help companies expand. Okay, so that may mean investment and setting up an entity, but it may not, for example. So it is important that when we talk and we look at sort of the routes to market, the market entry, what's the most effective way for them to get into a market? Okay. Now, in a service business, wanting to get established, it's very likely that your clients, for example, would need to have an entity in the US. But we look at that. We look at the market. I said, we look at what the competitors are doing. We look at what potential opportunity is there a partner that they can work with, for example. Those are the sort of things. And then the other thing, which is really important, and we looked at this with one of your clients. What structure do they need? Okay, so
in terms of the entity,
and not just with the sort of legal type of entity, but in terms of how do they operate. So do they have a back office and a front office, for example? So do they need all the resource to be in one place or not? Okay. So for example, they might think, I need to be in New York because that's where lots of the company's headquarters are. That's where a lot of the talent is. We need to be there. But do your researchers need to be there, for example, or could they be in Ohio or Missouri, where you've got much cheaper costs? You've got, because a lot of this as well is around churn. It's getting talent and then keeping them, and actually sort of having a business model that works. So that's what we would look at as well, which is, well, what actually does a good structure look like here? And then we also look at what their specialities is. So if they're going to, because there's no point us helping a company get into the market unless we happen to be competitive in that market. So we look at, well, what are your needs? What's your value proposition? What's your USPs really? And then we start to look at, well, where are those clusters operating? Because you probably, if you are sector driven or you have a particular emphasis, then we need to find what that is, and we'll provide those options. But it's really about helping them to think about the things that would make their business effective, not just in the short term, but in the longer term. And I think the bigger companies do that, but the smaller companies are more opportunistic. And it's difficult. They don't have the time, they don't have the resource, don't have the skills, and so they tend to follow their customer. And it's not necessary, and that first customer may not be representative of the whole market. So we help just to bring in a little bit more of a balanced perspective on that. And we've got the resource and bandwidth to do it.
And if a company were to engage with you on putting a report like this together, what is it going to cost them?
It's really not that much money. I mean, it's somewhere probably depending on the level, and I can talk through some of the steps that we do as well. But I mean, somewhere between £5,000 and £10,000 would get you a really good analysis of where. And to give you an example, so we've worked with a couple of companies recently, and it tends to, so we would define your parameters first of all. So what is it you're looking for? So what's important, and we'd help you to sort of prioritize those, and we'd weight those as well. Then in terms of, so we when you're looking at an investment, okay, or a location, we call it sort of, you look at two things: cost factors and quality. So the cost is around the cost of employment, cost of rent, cost, that sort of thing. And then the quality is, very important things. Are people from the UK, for example, going to go over and live over there? Therefore, quality of life is important. Flights, access to, eat. So we look at different things like that. Okay.
And you weight all these.
And we weight. So we identify. We work with the client. So, well, what is important to you? Okay, and let's probably, so what are the elements we need to consider, and then so is there particular skill sets that you need to hire, or is there do you need to be near universities that churn out IT graduates in a particular field, for example? Is that your domain, or what do you need? What is it that makes your business tick, if you like? Yeah. So we work with those, and then we go and map those across. We're doing an initial, say we're looking at the US, we'd say, right, we'll do an initial top line analysis of those sort of top criteria, if you like, and just rank them, okay. And score them, and find out certain things about, the labour supply, the costs, so on. So you'd have a top line that would be able to go, okay, those are out, those 4 look interesting, right? And then we'd go into a little bit more detail. So we'd look at, say, within those states, then you get different cities. So in Florida, for example, do I go to Jacksonville or do I go to Miami, or do I go to? So we would, out of those states, and we'd dig down and see what cities and what regions within those are interesting. And again, then we'd build up cost model, like an evaluation benchmark. So we'd be able to benchmark side by side based on your criteria and the weightings. Here's what the options look like, and then we choose sort of top 2 or 3 with the client, and then we'd organise a visit.
Oh, brilliant. Okay.
Yeah. So we handhold them, take them, and so we engage in that sort of latter bit when we've sort of narrowed it down a little bit. We speak to the economic development organisations, we go out to recruitment agencies to find out about what the current job rates are, or wage rates are for what the churn rates are. We get just much richer data from those, and then we present that to the, and then we'll help work. So we go and we accompany them on the site visits as well, and then we help make a decision based on that.
So you mentioned something then about speaking with the EDOs, and I think something that a lot of people are unaware of are some of the incentives available to businesses.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been to lots of events before, where you'll have lots of representatives from different EDOs standing up and presenting about their state and saying all of the benefits of setting up there, and as well as the incentives that can be offered for a business setting up there. And I think most companies will go, I'm going to go to America, I'm going to go to New York, I'm going to go to California or Texas, and they'll just do it.
Yeah.
Without speaking to anyone, they'll just do it. And I think they're missing out on a big trick here, because I'll hand over to you, Yassin, to just speak a bit about if a company actually spoke to you as a representative of the Florida Economic Development Office, what could you do for a business looking to set up in Florida, and even if they're already there?
So there is a rule: is the more jobs you create, and the more money you can get.
Okay.
That's the first rule. And depending then on the number of jobs and the type of operations, because also the type of jobs you are going to create are important. If it is, for example, retail jobs, it doesn't count. But if you are going to open a research center with 100 researchers, you will have different type of incentives. So we can do a simulation for you, depending on the type of jobs you are going to create and the location in Florida. And this is something quite interesting, because it goes down to the county level, where you will have different type of incentives, even depending on the county within the state. Wow. So sometimes just going 10 kilometers away, you will have a better deal. So that's something we can help companies to look at. But you have to understand something is, if you get too much incentives, it means that it's a region or an area that is underdeveloped, which means it might be challenging also to recruit people. So there is a trade-off here between the money you get up front and the return on investment you get after.
Got it.
Yeah.
So some companies, for example, in manufacturing, they can ask as much money as they can, and they can go also to underdeveloped area, because it's manufacturing. They will take a big piece of land, and the region will make sure.
Develop the region.
Exactly. Yeah. But for a service business, they have to be, I think, in an area where they will be able to get the people they need to deliver the service.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the people, you don't have a business. So you can't bring people, well, to Florida, yes. Some people do relocate, but you have to think about the growth of the sector you are into in the area you are going to set up. So you can have, for example, a region that is big in a specific sector, but if you look at the trend in the past 10 years, it's declining. People are leaving the area. That's not a good sign. But on the other hand, you can see a region that has not as many employment or access to talent in that region. But if you look at the data in the past 10 years, you see a growth in terms of people either relocating to the area to work in that sector, or just the graduates that are being done from local universities. So the growth factors are also quite important. And then the incentives, I would say it's, I should not do a mistake here, the cherry on the top. that will help you, that will help you take the final decision. But it should not be the driver.
Got it.
In service.
Let me add to that, because it is important to talk about incentives, but it's also important, I think, particularly for SMEs, to talk about connectivity. Okay. When an SME is looking to get into a market like the US, it takes time. Even like getting your bank account, getting your mobile phone. So there's a lot of time burn, and that time burn costs money. Okay. So the more you can get connected quickly with partners, customers, the better. Okay. So one of you, we worked with one of your, had a conversation with one of your clients, and they were looking, they were in ICT recruitment, but they were looking to expand into life sciences. And they were looking at San Diego and San Francisco. Okay, and we spoke to them. I said, "Have you considered Orange County?" And they haven't. Right? And they haven't really, they hadn't
thought about it.
Hadn't thought about it. So we work with them. We've been working with them with the Irvine Chamber of Commerce for the last 3 years, and they're actually the biggest concentration, or one of the biggest concentration of medical device professionals in the whole entire US. Okay, but it just doesn't have the name like San Diego. But what's interesting with these guys is that they are super hungry. Okay, because they're trying to keep building, and as I mentioned earlier, states are looking to build those ecosystems, and having international companies and brains and insight and all that really helps to develop that cluster. Okay, so the Irvine Chamber, for example, last year and again this year, they focus purely on medtech, and they paid for 10 companies, the flights effectively for 10 UK companies that didn't matter, they qualify, that were looking at at the West Coast effectively, and they didn't come over to a conference which is run by Octane, which is one of the accelerators, but they put on a week-long agenda for them, meeting, helping them meet with the university, with recruitment, with all the peers and all that, so they really got that comfort factor that they're getting, if they can get integrated fast, and that undoubtedly there's no money. They're not throwing money at jobs and that sort. They are saying, we're going to help you be successful here, and that's where you mentioned earlier about the tier 1s versus tier 2s. That for me is the fundamental difference. You won't get that if you go to New York or you go to San Francisco. Okay, you will get that in those that are a bit hungry and are going
faster. So question for you both, really, because we did a heat map on where all of our contractors are placing, and where some of our clients are setting up offices, and you do get the standard New York, California, Texas. We then identified what we called as opportunity states. Where we were saying the population of both workers being placed and recruitment agencies setting up offices was very low, but the economies of those states were quite good, and so there's an opportunity there. There's less competition, but still a good economy. And we know that each state in the US is comparable to other countries' GDP, right? From your opinion, what are some of the real opportunity states, but still taking into account somewhere that you would actually want to go and set up a business and maybe go and live there as well? As someone with an international mindset coming from the UK, what do you think some of those might be?
I would say the obvious one is Florida. But I think to be honest, there are other regions in America, like for example, the Washington DC area that Amazon has selected. And I would say you can, in terms of technology, you just look at the shortlisted regions in America, the 20 top regions for Amazon to set up the HQ to.
Oh, really?
So South Florida was on it.
Interesting.
They have selected the DC area. They have selected New York, obviously. But there were other hubs across the US that were shortlisted. So I think I will look first at this.
Because you're kind of, at that point, you're tapping into Amazon's research.
Exactly.
And saying, where were they looking at going, for what reasons?
Yeah.
I mean, this is one of the things we talk about SMEs following their customers, but also, look at how does a state or a country develop. And if you look at Ireland, for example, when it attracted attracted Dell, it's now got 8 of the top 10 sort of life science firms, etc. So you bring these big OEMs, and then guess what? Clusters develop as a result of that. So I would look at, where are the big companies locating? Okay, are they moving? Are they setting things up? And if you follow those, because that's where clusters develops.
And that's why each state's so desperate to get that big company. So the flagship company, and then the rest of the cluster develops around that.
But you also have sometimes the other way around, and that's a part of the HQ2 approach, where you look where an ecosystem exists with startup and research centers, and you see where the specific sectors are developing.
Yeah.
And then these big companies will want to plug into that ecosystem of brilliant people doing great things and taking that knowledge from that ecosystem. So you have the two ways, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. But you also look, I mean, if you look at on the West Coast, you had San Francisco, Silicon Valley. Well, then you had sort of Austin, Texas. Now, Seattle. You've got, different places now that are, in Oregon, for example. You're getting these places that are close by, right? But just forming clusters now because they're pretty close to it, but not as expensive. Yeah. So they can get the talent, because people, if you think about how a lot of the people go first of all, and they work really hard and they get in, and then guess what? They get a bit older, get a family, and they go, you know what? Actually, I could do without this, And then, well, actually, I wouldn't mind staying close by, but so that is a factor. We worked with the state of Maine for a number of years, and it's only Portland, Maine is a great sort of city, and it's only 2 hours from Boston, for example. So, and they're developing a life science cluster as well, and that is commutable, less expensive, and a better quality of life, for example. So there's no sort of one answer, but you want to look at where sort of those economies are growing and where some of the bigger companies are going to.
Okay, so to just in terms of timing, what I'd like to do is just capture some of the key points that the viewers will have to think about or consider when looking at a location. Some of what I'm getting would be, we're looking at the incentives. What are the incentives of that state? What is your customer focus? Like, do you have customers, and are they in a particular location? If so, yes.
And do you need to be client facing?
Do you need to be client facing?
Or not?
Are you going to be going after a local economy, or are you going to really just use this as an office to be in country and then develop the whole country? And any other points, like key points?
I think
local talent.
So think, but I do think, be ambitious. So think, we tend to be a bit short-termist as SMEs, and quite risk-averse, rightly, because we don't have loads of money necessarily. So there is that sort of thing. Well, let's just do it sort of stuff. But you need to think about where you want to be. What business do I want to create? So have the long-term thinking, but then put in nice, short-term plan. And I think it is about your business model. So how am I going to where are my customers, and then what do I need to deliver? What am I actually offering, and where does that need to be? Okay, so thinking about that, and I think I would just say invest a little bit upfront to do that. You don't have the time or the expertise, and it really isn't expensive to do a good thorough assessment of where you could be. And guess what? It might be somewhere that you
Okay?
Because we're all guilty of going, oh, I know so and so, he told me that X was a good location or Y, and we sort of get dragged into that. But your business is unique, and our job is to help you find the right place for you, because each recruitment business might have different specialism, different approach, different style, that sort of. So our job is to try and help them find where that is.
And I guess sometimes when our clients are going into America, they recognize that maybe the industry they focus on in the UK isn't there in the US, or there's actually something else that they could focus on. How are do you help companies identify growing industries, like a new industry that they can tap into? Because I presume America's the land of innovation, and the investment going into these new ideas and new companies is enormous. And recruitment agencies want to tap into that, right? Because a startup company with oodles of cash are going to be hiring people. How do you tap into that? So where are the booming economies right now as well.
So a couple of these things. There's a website called I think it's US Cluster Mapping, or clustermapping.us, I think. So they can go in and they can just type in whatever subsector or sector, and they can see like a heat map almost.
Wow.
So it's free resource, so we can share a link with that.
That we will do that.
That's a pretty good start.
I think that's a great start. Yeah.
And that's where they'll see both the number of jobs, number of companies, and that sort of stuff as well. So that gives them an idea.
Brilliant.
And I think we talked about this earlier. I mean, each of those economic development organisations we talked about that sort of represent the state, if you like, one of their key propositions is talent. Okay, so for any of your listeners here, I mean, if they are going somewhere, they should use the economic development organization to help them, get plugged in, etc. But then they should continue that relationship, because when we're representing states, they want us to bring businesses in and they'll show them around. And guess what? They'll bring in the recruitment companies.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you want to be the person to bring them to,
totally.
right?
So get to know Yassin.
Exactly.
So, but it's really true, and it's something don't think. I mean, every small business needs channels to customers effectively, and the EDOs are a great channel. So not only for helping them get embedded, but also then as a source of leads going forward as well.
And Yassin, does your service cost something to a company?
So the service, as the representation I do for Florida, has no cost for companies. But Colin can mention about the service of OCO for companies.
Yeah. So we OCO is the sole delivery partner for the Department of International Trade in North America, so US and Canada. What that means is, so they don't do all the work. There's too many UK companies for DIT, Department of Trade, to deliver, so they contract us to do that. So as part of that service, so we can do 3 hours of sort of free guidance, mentorship, support, research, etc. So any of your listeners who want to, we can forward a link, and there's a short sort of survey form, taking 5 minutes to complete, and then they can get a few hours of free time to help them. And that might just be to sort of challenge their thinking. It might be a little bit of initial research to look at where those clusters are, etc. So we'd love to help your clients, and it's a nice way to start. I always think that SMEs need they don't have loads of money, but they need help, and sometimes they don't just step back and go, well, where can I get my supports from, etc. So there are good channels to do that, and I think with DIT, we're able to do that. And then if you want to do more, then we have an agreed rate of $100 per hour through DIT, and we'll do a proposal for each. Build a proposal for each company. DIT, we're very copied in on it, etc. So and really, we're very clear. We say this is what we agree the scope. We say the deliverables, cost, time frame, etc. So it's all very, very, very transparent. But we can do quite a lot for little. We have very strong
in that 3 hour period.
Yeah, well, 3 hours, and also in a charge. But it's not that we're not expensive. So, and I think getting that sort of done, because I know lots of small business. The directors should be running the business. They've got enough day-to-day stuff going on. They can't create the headspace to be able to do it properly, and that's what we can provide. And then give them that legwork in order to and help them sort of get the analysis that they can then help make decisions on. Yeah,
perfect. So look, I think we're going to wrap it up here. I don't know if there's any questions that anyone wanted to ask. If there are, please feel free to send them through. I think what we're going to do is send a follow-up email out to everyone that's attended and also registered but weren't able to make it. Within that, I'll provide both of your contact details as well as the link for this 3 hour consulting service. And I think we'll try and get the link for the heat map.
Yeah, absolutely.
That'll be brilliant for people to have a look at. If anyone does have any questions, please feel free to send them through. If we don't answer them right now, Colin or Yassin will be able to answer them and put them on the follow-up email that will go out to you. So look, I would really like to thank both of you for your time today and for coming in and doing the webinar with us, providing expertise and knowledge. It sounds like people should really get in touch, because it's not going to cost them anything, and they're going to get a bunch of information kind of specific to them, and they can talk a bit about their business and what they're looking to do. So I really do hope that people do get in touch with you afterwards.
Look, there's a great opportunity in the US. the employment is pretty full at the moment. So there's a really it's a strong economy. There is complications here in Europe, etc. So I would, I think diversification is great. I think the US is the right market right now for companies, but you need to have the local sort of guidance. So we're like the Sherpa, if you like, and we can just help you. We've been there for a decade. We've got really strong networks, across that. So we use both our research and our networks, which is
invaluable. The network is invaluable.
So important. And because we've been working in those, we've probably worked with, over the last even 5 to 10 years, we've probably worked with half of the states, I would have thought, in some capacity. So if we don't work with them now, we know them.
And know someone.
And we're very involved in that, whole thing. So we can really help. And I think, America, it does take time. It does take money. Okay. And it is important to get it as right as you can first time around. So I would, urge your listeners and clients to invest a little bit in terms of, the homework, okay, to get it right. And then we can get you out there and get you connected. And that's, hopefully will accelerate your business in the right way, because you don't really want to be changing it after that.
Brilliant. Well, look, thank you for everyone joining. We'll be recording this. Oh, sorry. Okay, so we've got one question coming in about where do we think it's best to set up a life science recruitment company in the US at the moment?
Good question. So there are various hubs, obviously, in the US. So I'll let Yassin talk about Florida, but certainly, Boston is the sort of tried and tested on the East Coast. But even in, you've got the likes of, Cleveland Clinic, for example, the Mayo Clinic, so Minnesota and into Ohio, you've got sort of those clusters. And then over in the West Coast, you have, San Diego, Irvine, Orange County, and San Francisco. They're sort of the key clusters that we're seeing. I think, there a number of the states are built, they are. A lot of them have got a sort of life sciences element to it now. They're trying to develop that. Well, it's good job, R&D, all that sort of stuff. So it's quite interesting. Yassin, do you want to?
Yeah, I would say perhaps it depends also if you are looking at executive search, or if you are looking at the people that will be working in a research center, or that would be perhaps working in a line of manufacturing for company manufacturing medical devices or biotech products. So for me, these two are very different.
Okay.
So that's why the Boston area, I would say, and the classic locations are good when it's about executive research. Mm-hmm. But if you are looking at the manufacturing or laboratory type,
like clinical trials,
exactly, that might be different.
Okay.
And then it depends if you need to be in that exact cluster where you will recruit people for, like you need to be in Cambridge for Cambridge recruitment, or if you can be this type of recruitment companies that just need a base that will recruit recruitment consultants.
Got it.
Yeah.
To manage the US market, then the cost will not be the same.
Yeah. So it's what's your business strategy as well? How do you think it's going to develop? And I think one thing is US market as a whole. You then have clusters within the industry, but then within that, it seems like you've got clusters within clusters.
Exactly.
That are, medtech is here, and pharmacovigilance is here, and et cetera, et cetera. And you're not going to. You might be able to get it from Google, but you want some solid data to back it up.
We can do the research.
If you're in a particular area, then let us know. We can find out where that is. The other thing I'd say is that on the life sciences, obviously, it's a money heavy industry, if you like, or investment heavy sort of typically. So some companies go, so if you do need to be close to, now probably not for recruitment agencies, but for firms that are looking to go in, do they need to be near venture capital, private equity, for example? So that's another consideration. So again, it just comes down to what are you trying to what should your business look like, and what do you need to do. But in terms of any of the sort of niche clusters within life sciences, we can easily sort of pick out where those are.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, look, thank you guys. Please feel free to send any of the questions. We'll get them answered by these guys. But we'll wrap the webinar up. We'll send out a recording and contact details for everyone involved as well. So thank you for everyone who's joined today.
Thank you.